People like you shouldn't work here, she whispered, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she cornered me between the ice sculpture and dessert table. The company Gala hummed around us, but her words created a bubble of silence. I stood frozen, champagne flute in hand, watching my boss's wife glide away with a satisfied smirk, leaving me alone with my shame and the remnants of a career I'd built from nothing. 3 years I'd spent as the financial strategist who saved the struggling investment firm. Working 60-hour weeks, I transformed toxic assets into profitable ventures while living in my modest apartment and taking the bus. Meanwhile, my boss purchased his third vacation property and his wife renovated their mansion's east wing. What she meant by people like you wasn't subtle. I grew up in government housing. My accent still carried traces of my neighborhood. My clothes, while professional, lacked designer labels. I'd earned my position through merit, not connections or inherited wealth. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't quit. That would give her exactly what she wanted. Because what Tabitha Harlow didn't know was that I had already discovered something about their precious charitable foundation, something that would change everything. And in 3 weeks, she would come to me begging for help, not knowing I was about to take everything she valued most. If you're still listening, thank you for staying with me. I notice many listeners drop off before hearing how these stories end. But I promise, what happened next changed not just my life, but everyone at Landmark Investments. Stay until the end. You won't believe where I am now. My name is Alara Neves. At 32, I was the youngest senior financial strategist at Landmark. My colleagues called me the fixer because I could transform failing portfolios into gold. What most people didn't see behind my quick smile was the girl who grew up in Eastside Gardens, sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with my grandmother and 3 siblings. I put myself through college washing dishes and cleaning offices at night. I graduated top of my class from State University, not an Ivy League school, but I earned every credit through pure grit. When Landmark hired me, I thought I'd finally crossed the invisible barrier. I believed talent and hard work were the only currencies that mattered. Preston Harlow, the CEO, seemed to value my contributions. In board meetings, he'd nod at my analyses and implement my strategies. The company's recovery over the past 3 years was largely due to my financial restructuring plan. The annual reports proved it. The numbers never lied. His wife, Tabitha, was another story. The first time we met, at a company dinner 6 months after I started, she looked at my outfit, a simple black dress I'd saved 3 paychecks to buy, and asked if I was one of the catering staff. When Preston corrected her, she'd merely raised an eyebrow and said, "How progressive of you, darling." I ignored these moments. I was used to being underestimated. Each slight just fueled my determination to prove myself through results. The night of the gala, I'd been excited. Our firm had just landed the Castleton account, a client I'd personally convinced to trust us with their $50 million portfolio. Preston had congratulated me in front of the entire team that morning. I thought, finally, I would be acknowledged not just for my work, but as someone who belonged. I wore a navy blue dress, elegant but affordable. I'd splurged on having my curly hair professionally styled. When I arrived, several colleagues complimented me. For once, I felt like I truly belonged in these marble halls. Then came the moment with Tabitha. She'd appeared beside me as I admired the elaborate ice sculpture of the company logo. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Yes, thank you. The gala is beautiful." She sipped her champagne. "Preston tells me you're responsible for the Castleton account." "I worked on the pitch, yes." She glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. "You know, I've been watching you. The way you try to fit in, with your discount store clothes and practice manners." I felt my cheeks burn but kept my expression neutral. "Preston may be impressed by your little financial tricks, but this world," she gestured around the ballroom with her champagne flute, "this isn't for everyone. People like you shouldn't work here. You don't belong, and everyone knows it." That's when she delivered those cutting words and walked away, leaving me frozen between the ice sculpture and dessert table. I wanted to run, to hide in the bathroom and let tears fall, but something hardened inside me instead. I watched her join a circle of society wives, laughing as if she hadn't just tried to destroy someone's dignity. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Instead of calling in sick or drafting a resignation letter, I pulled out my laptop and began researching. If Tabitha wanted to play the belonging game, I needed to understand what truly mattered to her. It didn't take long to find. The Harlow Foundation was Tabitha's pride and joy, a charitable organization that supposedly helped underprivileged youth. In reality, it was her ticket into elite social circles. The annual Harlow Foundation Gala was the highlight of the social season. Being on its board meant instant status among the city's elite. I dug deeper. Financial records showed the foundation was struggling. Donations were down. Expenses were rising. Their investment portfolio was poorly managed. And their annual fundraiser was just 6 weeks away. At work on Monday, I maintained my professional demeanor. I nodded politely when passing Preston in the hallway. In meetings, I presented my analyses with the same precision and insight as always. But after hours, I stayed late, not working on company projects, but developing a plan that would change everything. Octavia Penn had been my first major client at Landmark. When she came to us, she was a tech entrepreneur with a promising startup and modest savings. 3 years later, after following my investment strategy, she'd sold her company for $75 million. We'd developed a friendship beyond the professional relationship. I called her Tuesday evening. "Alara, how are you? How's life at the stuffy investment firm?" Octavia's voice was warm and genuine. "Actually, I'm calling because I've found an interesting opportunity," I said. "How would you like to make a significant social impact while also gaining entry into the city's most exclusive circles? You know I hate those pretentious gatherings. Even if it means helping to reshape how charity is done in this city?" There was a pause. "I'm listening." I explained my discovery about the Harlow Foundation, its financial troubles, its potential, and most importantly, how it could be transformed into something genuinely impactful. The foundation's bylaws allow for a takeover if someone purchases enough of their debt and convinces the board they have a better vision, I explained. With your resources and my financial strategy, we could acquire it within weeks. "And what would we do with it?" Octavia asked. "Transform it into what it claims to be, a true force for helping underprivileged youth. Real scholarships, real mentorship, real change." "This sounds personal, Alara." I hesitated. "Let's just say I recently received a reminder that some people think success should remain exclusive to those born into the right circles." Octavia was silent for a moment. "Send me the numbers. If they check out, I'm in." Over the next week, I reached out to 4 other clients who owed their financial success to my strategies. People who, like me, hadn't started with advantages. People who remembered what it was like to be excluded. By Friday, I had verbal commitments totaling $12 million, more than enough to execute my plan. I hired Dominic Reed, a brilliant attorney who specialized in nonprofit acquisitions. He'd grown up in the same neighborhood as me, but a generation earlier. He understood what I was trying to do without needing the personal details. "This foundation has serious mismanagement issues," he said after reviewing the documents I'd gathered. "The board has a fiduciary responsibility they're failing to uphold. We can use that." "How quickly can we move?" I asked. 3 weeks. Maybe 4. We need to approach current board members individually before making a formal offer. "Make it 3, I said. "Their annual fundraiser is in 6 weeks. We need to be in control well before that." At work, I continued performing excellently. Preston even called me into his office to discuss a promotion. "You've been exceptional, Alara. The Castleton account alone justified a bonus, but your overall performance has been outstanding. I'm considering making you Director of Strategic Investments." "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the recognition." He leaned back in his chair. "Tabitha and I are having a small dinner party next weekend. Key investors, board members, you should come." I forced a smile. I'd be honored. "Good. It's important for someone in a director position to develop the right social connections." I nodded, thinking of the papers Dominic was preparing at that very moment. The dinner party was at the Harlow's mansion, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a view of the city skyline. I arrived in a simple but elegant dress, determined to maintain my composure no matter what Tabitha might say or do. She greeted me at the door with a tight smile. Alara, how nice of you to come. Thank you for having me, I replied, matching her false warmth. Throughout the evening, she made subtle jabs. When I mentioned a restaurant I enjoyed, she remarked, how quaint. Preston and I prefer establishments with proper wine selections. When another guest complimented my analysis of emerging markets, she cut in with, Alara has such a unique perspective coming from her background. I smiled through it all, knowing what was happening behind the scenes. That very morning, Dominic had secured support from 2 board members of the Harlow Foundation who were concerned about the financial mismanagement. After dinner, Preston gave me a tour of his home office, showing off awards and photographs with celebrities and politicians. Impressive, I said, noting a picture of him and Tabitha with the mayor at a foundation event. The foundation gala? He said proudly. Tabitha's pride and joy. She's been running it for 8 years now. I've heard it's the social event of the season. Indeed, though between us there are some financial challenges this year. Nothing serious, he added quickly. Just cash flow issues. I nodded sympathetically. Managing nonprofits can be complex. Tabitha handles most of it. She has her heart in the right place, but numbers aren't her strength. He chuckled. Maybe I should have you look at their books sometime. I'd be happy to help, I said, the irony almost making me laugh. By the 3rd week of my plan, everything was in place. Dominic had secured commitments from 5 of the 9 board members. My investors had pooled their resources. The paperwork was ready. Then, just as Dominic predicted, Tabitha called me at work. Alara, she said, her voice strained with forced politeness. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all, Mrs. Harlow. How can I help you? Please call me Tabitha. She paused. The foundation's fundraiser is in 3 weeks. We're facing some challenges. Preston mentioned you're good with numbers. Perhaps you could look at our books? We'd compensate you, of course. I savored the moment, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. I'd be happy to meet and discuss how I might help, I finally said. Wonderful. Tomorrow at Café Laurent? Say noon? I'll be there. I hung up and immediately called Dominic. Move up the timeline, execute everything today. Are you sure? We plan to. I'm meeting Tabitha tomorrow. I want the papers signed before then. That night, I barely slept. Years of being underestimated, of fighting twice as hard for half the recognition, of smiling through thinly veiled insults. It was all coming to a head. I arrived at Café Laurent 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the center of the restaurant. I wanted witnesses. I ordered a sparkling water and waited. Tabitha arrived 10 minutes late, designer sunglasses perched on her head, worry lines creasing her forehead. She sat across from me, placing an expensive planner on the table. Thank you for coming, she said, signaling for a waiter. I'll have a glass of the Bordeaux. When the waiter left, she turned to me with a practiced smile. Preston speaks so highly of your financial acumen. The foundation is having some liquidity issues. Nothing serious, but the gala is our major fundraiser, and we need everything perfect. We desperately need someone to restructure our finances before then. Would you help us? I took a sip of my water, letting the moment stretch. The waiter returned with her wine. She thanked him and took a sip, watching me expectantly. I smiled gently. Actually, I just bought the entire foundation yesterday. Her wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. The cafe went quiet. That's impossible, she whispered. The board voted unanimously this morning. I've already approved a complete leadership change. Her face paled as understanding dawned. Her social status, her charity galas, her position on every prestigious committee, all now under my control. You need not worry about people like me working there anymore, I said, placing money on the table for her broken glass. I'll be too busy running the organization. The foundation will announce its new direction tomorrow, focusing on educational scholarships for underprivileged youth from neighborhoods just like mine. Tabitha's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. You can't do this, she finally managed. Preston won't allow it. Preston doesn't have a say. The board voted based on financial mismanagement. Did you know the foundation was missing nearly $300,000 in documented expenditures? Money meant for scholarships that somehow funded private jet trips and spa weekends? Her eyes widened. Those were necessary networking opportunities to secure donors. The IRS might disagree. Fortunately, the new management, me, has decided not to pursue an audit as long as certain conditions are met. A waiter approached with a towel, kneeling to clean the shattered glass. Tabitha didn't even acknowledge him. "What conditions?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I smiled. "We can discuss those at the foundation offices tomorrow, 10 o'clock. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my wrist. "You planned this. That night at the gala, you did this because of what I said." I gently removed her hand. "No, Tabitha. I did this because it was the right thing to do. The foundation should actually help people, not serve as your social stepping stone." I walked out of the cafe feeling lighter than I had in years. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. That evening, my phone exploded with calls and messages. Preston, Tabitha, board members, social elites suddenly concerned about their foundation. I ignored them all except for one call from Preston. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "My wife is devastated." "I'm fixing a financially mismanaged charitable foundation," I replied calmly. "Something you should have done years ago as chairman." "If this is about what happened at the gala—" "What happened at the gala?" I interrupted. Silence. "Tabitha told me what she said to you. It was inappropriate, and I apologize on her behalf. But this, buying the foundation out from under us, this is extreme. This isn't about your wife's comments. This is about doing what's right. The foundation has helped exactly 27 students in 8 years, despite receiving millions in donations. That changes now. Alara, be reasonable. We can work something out. The promotion we discussed, I was thinking executive vice president, with a substantial equity package." "Are you trying to bribe me, Preston?" Another silence. "I'll see you at work tomorrow," I said and ended the call. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find Preston waiting for me. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, as if he'd slept poorly. "My office. Now," he said. I followed him, aware of curious glances from colleagues. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to me. "Name your price." "Excuse me?" "To sell the foundation back to us. Name your price." I sat down uninvited. "The foundation isn't for sale." "Everyone has a price, Alara." "Not for this. The foundation will finally fulfill its mission, providing educational opportunities to underprivileged youth." His face flushed. "You don't understand what you're doing. The social connections, the annual gala, these things matter in our world." "Your world, Preston, not mine. Is that what this is about? Some class warfare nonsense?" I leaned forward. "This is about accountability. The foundation claimed to help students like I once was, but instead funded your wife's social calendar. That ends now." He stared at me, then slowly sank into his chair. "If you go through with this, your career here is over." I figured as much. I've already drafted my resignation letter. I placed an envelope on his desk. Effective immediately. His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No. For the first time in 3 years, I'm doing exactly what I should have done all along." I stood and walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Preston? Tell Tabitha I expect her at the foundation offices at 10. If she wants to avoid a public scandal about those missing funds, she'll be there." I walked out, head high, past curious colleagues and through the lobby where I'd once felt so intimidated. Outside, the morning air felt crisp and clean, full of possibility. At precisely 10 o'clock, I sat at the head of the conference table in the Harlow Foundation's main office. The walls were adorned with photos of past galas, Tabitha prominently featured in each one, surrounded by celebrities and politicians. Dominic sat beside me, legal documents spread before us. Octavia and 2 other investors joined virtually on the large screen at the end of the room. At 10:15, Tabitha arrived, followed by Preston and a gray-haired man I recognized as their attorney. "You're late," I said simply. Tabitha looked like she wanted to snap back but thought better of it. She took a seat across from me, smoothing her designer dress with shaking hands. "Let's get this over with," Preston said. "What do you want?" Dominic slid a document across the table. "This outlines the terms of the transfer of control. As you can see, we've acquired 75% of the foundation's outstanding debt and secured board approval for new management." Preston's attorney examined the papers, his expression growing grim. "This appears to be in order." "What are your demands?" Tabitha asked, her voice tight. I folded my hands on the table. "First, you will both resign from the board, effective immediately." Preston started to object, but Tabitha placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. "Second, you will publicly endorse the foundation's new direction at a press conference next week." "Absolutely not," Preston said. "Third," I continued as if he hadn't spoken, "you will return the $300,000 in misappropriated funds, which will be used to establish a scholarship program for students from Eastside Gardens." "This is extortion," Preston's attorney interjected. Dominic smiled. "No, this is an alternative to an IRS audit and potential criminal charges for embezzlement from a nonprofit organization." The room fell silent. Preston and Tabitha exchanged glances. "And if we agree?" Tabitha finally asked. "Then we don't pursue legal action. The foundation is rebranded and redirected toward its stated mission. Your social standing takes a hit, but your freedom remains intact." Preston stood abruptly. "We need to discuss this privately." I nodded. "You have 5 minutes." They left with their attorney. When the door closed, Octavia's voice came through the speaker. "You're enjoying this a little too much, Alara." I smiled. "Perhaps. Remember our goal, transforming the foundation, not just punishing them." "Understood, but accountability matters too." The door opened and they returned. Tabitha's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Preston looked defeated. "We agree to your terms," he said stiffly. "Good choice," I replied. What followed was a flurry of signatures and legal proceedings. By noon, the transfer was complete. The Harlow Foundation was now under new management. As they prepared to leave, Tabitha paused at the door. "You won't be able to run this place. The social connections, the donor relationships, they're built on personal ties. Without us, the money will dry up." I smiled. "That's where you're wrong. The foundation's new backers have already pledged. 20 million more than you raised in the past 3 years combined." Her expression faltered. "Oh, and Tabitha? The annual gala will proceed as scheduled. We've already sent out notices to all the usual attendees explaining the leadership change and new mission. I do hope you'll attend as guests. It would make the transition so much more seamless." Preston practically dragged her from the room as her composure finally broke. When they were gone, Dominic gathered the signed documents. "Congratulations. You now control one of the city's most prestigious charitable foundations." "We control it," I corrected. "All of us." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We restructured the foundation from the ground up. New mission statement, new programs, new staff, including several brilliant people who, like me, had been overlooked because of their backgrounds or lack of connections. The press picked up the story. "Investment prodigy takes over Elite Foundation, promises real change," read one headline. Another proclaimed, "Harlow Foundation scandal, society couple ousted amid financial questions." Preston resigned as CEO of Landmark Investments the following week, citing personal reasons. The board, aware of the brewing scandal, didn't fight his departure. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the foundation's new direction. We established scholarships for students from underserved communities. We created mentorship programs pairing successful professionals who had overcome similar obstacles with promising young people. 3 weeks after the takeover, the night of the annual gala arrived. We kept the venue, an elegant hotel ballroom, but transformed everything else. Instead of celebrity entertainers, student musicians performed. Instead of champagne towers and caviar, we served excellent but reasonably priced food, with the savings directed to programs. Most importantly, We invited 50 scholarship recipients and their families to attend alongside the usual society crowd. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests in a simple but elegant gown. Many of the regular attendees came, curious about the changes. Some were clearly uncomfortable seeing teenagers from poor neighborhoods mingling with socialites, but others engaged warmly, seemingly relieved by the foundation's authentic new purpose. At 8 o'clock, Tabitha and Preston arrived. The room quieted as they entered. She wore a stunning gown that probably cost more than a year's rent for most of our scholarship recipients. Her smile was fixed in place, but her eyes darted nervously around the transformed space. I approached them. "Thank you for coming. Your table is near the front." Preston nodded stiffly. Tabitha's smile never wavered, though her eyes burned with resentment. "Lovely event," she said through clenched teeth. "So different. Change was overdue, don't you think?" Before she could respond, I was called to the stage. As I stepped up to the microphone, surveying the room filled with society figures and students from neighborhoods like mine, a sense of completion washed over me. "Welcome to the first annual New Horizons Foundation Gala," I began, using the organization's new name. "Tonight marks not just a rebranding, but a recommitment to our core mission, creating educational opportunities for all young people, regardless of where they come from." As I spoke, I noticed Tabitha whispering to Preston, her expression growing increasingly agitated. He placed a restraining hand on her arm, which she shook off. "Our first announcement tonight is the establishment of the East Side Scholars Program, which will provide full college scholarships to 50 students annually from underserved communities." Applause filled the room, enthusiastic from some tables, polite but reserved from others. "Our second announcement," I continued, "is the appointment of our new board of directors, comprised of individuals who have demonstrated genuine commitment to educational equity." I introduced each new board member, accomplished professionals who had overcome significant obstacles. With each name, Tabitha's expression darkened. Finally, I came to the last part of my speech. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the Harlows, who led this foundation for 8 years. All eyes turned to their table. Preston managed a tight nod. Tabitha stared straight ahead, unmoving. Their presence tonight demonstrates their support for our new direction, and for that, we thank them. It was the perfect public humiliation, subtle, respectful on the surface, but devastating in its implications. Everything they had used to elevate their social status was now being used to elevate those they had looked down upon. After my speech, I mingled with guests, particularly spending time with the scholarship recipients. Their excitement and gratitude reinforced that every step of this journey had been worthwhile. Later in the evening, I found myself momentarily alone near the dessert table. Ironically, the same position where Tabitha had cornered me months ago. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find her standing there, champagne in hand. "Congratulations," she said, her voice low. "You've destroyed everything we built." "No," I replied quietly. "I've rebuilt what you neglected. There's a difference." "Don't pretend this isn't personal." I selected a small pastry from the display. "The foundation's transformation isn't personal. It's necessary." "And choosing Eastside Gardens for your first scholarship program? The very neighborhood you're from? That's not personal?" I met her gaze directly. That was personal. I wanted students from where I grew up to know that people like them absolutely should be here, in these rooms, making these decisions. She laughed bitterly. "You think you've won? This isn't about winning or losing, Tabitha. It's about doing what's right." "So righteous," she sneered. "You know nothing about our world." "I know enough to change it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Preston is finished in this city because of you. Our invitations have dried up. Our friends are distancing themselves." For the first time, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Her entire identity had been wrapped up in social status and appearances. "Build something real," I suggested. "Something that actually helps people." "People like you?" she asked bitterly. "People like all of us." I gestured around the room. "We're not so different, Tabitha. We all want to matter, to contribute, to belong." She stared at me for a long moment, Something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance. Exactly. But perhaps the first crack in her armor of superiority. Without another word, she walked away, rejoining Preston at their increasingly isolated table. As the evening wound down, I stepped onto the hotel's balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The city lights sparkled below, and I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Octavia joined me, handing me a glass of water. Quite a night. Indeed. So, she said, leaning against the railing, was it worth it? I considered the question carefully. Seeing those students tonight, knowing what this foundation will do for them, absolutely. And the revenge aspect? I smiled. That was satisfying too, I won't deny it, but it's not the part that will keep me going. What will? I turned to look back through the glass doors, where scholarship recipients were still chatting excitedly with mentors and donors, changing what belonging means in rooms like this. Octavia nodded. So what's next for Alara Neves? I'm starting my own investment firm, focusing on clients who want both financial returns and social impact. Need a primary investor? I laughed. Are you offering? Consider it done. She raised her glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed. The following Monday, as I worked in my new office setting up my firm, my assistant notified me of a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent, he said. I looked up to see Tabitha standing in my doorway. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced by a simple but elegant business suit. Her hair was pulled back, her face devoid of its usual perfect makeup. 5 minutes, she said. That's all I ask. Curious, I nodded to my assistant, who closed the door behind him. Tabitha remained standing. I've spent the past week thinking about what you said at the gala. And? You destroyed everything I thought mattered. Her voice was steady, her gaze direct. But watching you with those students, I realized I've never built anything real. I waited, sensing there was more. I want to work for the foundation, she said finally. Not as a director or even a manager. Entry level. I want to learn how to actually help people. I couldn't hide my surprise. Why would you want that? Because you were right. About everything. She took a deep breath. I need to build something real. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. I found none. The foundation has a community outreach coordinator position open, I said finally. It requires evening and weekend work with families from underserved neighborhoods. The pay is modest. I'll take it. You'll report to the program director, Zoe. She grew up in public housing and put herself through college. She won't tolerate any attitude or entitlement. I understand. I considered her for a long moment. Why should I believe this isn't some elaborate scheme to undermine what we're building? Tabitha met my gaze steadily. Because you've already taken everything I valued. Now I need to find something new to value. Her honesty was surprising. Perhaps losing everything had forced a genuine reckoning. I'll call Zoe, I said finally. If she agrees to interview you, you'll get a fair chance. Nothing more, nothing less. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. As she turned to leave, I added, Tabitha, people will talk. They'll say you've fallen far. She paused at the door. Let them talk. For the first time in my life, I don't care what people say. After she left, I sat thinking about the strange turns life takes. I hadn't just changed the foundation or my own circumstances. I might have changed Tabitha too. Whether her transformation was genuine or temporary remained to be seen. But I had accomplished something more meaningful than mere revenge. I had created the opportunity for real change. For the students we would help, for the communities we would serve, and perhaps even for someone who had once believed people like me didn't belong. The ultimate revenge wasn't taking away what Tabitha valued. It was creating something so meaningful that even she could see its worth. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Your support means everything. Like those students at the gala, sometimes we all need someone to believe we belong in spaces others try to keep us from. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation. And remember, the most powerful response to those who say you don't belong is to create spaces where everyone does.